Good morning. My name is Kirsten Evans. I'm the Executive Director of In Defense of Christians, and I first would like to begin by giving a very deep and heartfelt thank you to Citizen Go for organizing this event. They've worked extremely hard, and they have done a fantastic job in pulling together what I think is a historic and a critical place of conversation and awareness about the plight of Christians in the Middle East. So I'm grateful that they allowed us to come on board as a co-sponsor of the event, as well as the Holy See, and we thank you for making this a reality, and congratulate you for making this a reality. Unfortunately, earlier this week, our president, Mr. Toufic Baaklini, was with us, but was unable to be here this morning for personal reasons. He needed to head back home, and has asked me to communicate his address to you this morning in his name. So these are the words of our president, Mr. Baaklini, and not my own. On behalf of myself, the board of directors and advisors, the staff and membership of IDC, I want to thank you for the opportunity to collaborate with you on this historic Congress. On Thursday, we listened to the voices of living testimonies of genocide, voices that, despite the barriers of language and the distances of continents, resounded a unified message. Voices from Syria, Iraq, Africa, Europe, and the United States. Speaking to the international community the truth of the crimes taking place in our world. Crimes that should rattle the conscience of all of humanity. Today, we have another opportunity to listen again, to learn, and to respond. I would like to thank the organizers of this week's Congress, Citizen Go, for their tireless work, and for the speakers for their courage of testimony and hope. 2 weeks ago, my staff and I had the privilege of traveling to Lebanon and Iraq and visit with the diverse communities displaced by ISIS. We spoke with religious leaders and political leaders, advocating on their behalf, all of whom asked the same things for the Christian communities struggling to survive: aid and protection. And they all spoke of the same hope, the hope of one day being able to go home. We walked the refugee camps in Erbil and spoke with the individuals living there. We saw with our own eyes the dire and impossible situation in which they find themselves. And yet at the same time, we witnessed their strength, their hope, and their dignity amidst their suffering. One afternoon, I spoke over an hour with a young woman who that very day had arrived to Erbil from Baghdad after escaping from the ISIS sex slave trade. With difficulty, she opened up her story to us, asking that we tell her story to the world, without, of course, using her name. After being beaten for 3 days, she was held captive in an abandoned school, fed once a day, and made available for the daily abuses of her captors. She spoke of the suffering of the women with whom she was held captive, from small children to older women, the abuses of the soldiers, their brutality, their lack of humanity. And her story, as we heard yesterday, is not unique. It is a story of far too many mothers, sisters, daughters, brothers, parents, and friends of so many Christians coming out of Iraq and Syria in its war-torn zones. Since 2014, IDC has worked to make the plight of suffering of these people known to the world and its leaders. In 2014, we launched a historic international summit in which all of the major patriarchs of the Middle East came to Washington and met with President Obama to discuss the concerns of their communities. In 2015, our National Leadership Convention was the occasion of the introduction for the U.S. Genocide Resolution. IDC members from around the world came out impassioned by this issue and canvassed 287 congressional offices. Through their continued contact with their representatives in the following months, they were able to commit 203 members of Congress to co-sponsor the resolution. Last month, IDC collaborated with the Knights of Columbus and launched a national campaign titled Stop the Christian Genocide, gathering 200,000 signatures in a few short weeks. Simultaneously, in answer to a direct request of the State Department, we submitted to the State Department and Congress a historic 300-page document chronicling evidence of the genocide against Christians under ISIS. 5 days later, the United States Congress voted to recognize the genocide with a historic unanimous vote. After continual engagement with congressional leadership, 3 days later, our friends in Congress pressured the Obama administration to follow suit. We had learned as late as the evening before that the administration was not committed to taking a stance of leadership on this issue. But by our continual effort with congressional leadership, we were able to change their direction. This was only the second time in American history that an ongoing genocide has been recognized while still occurring. IDC is now determined to hold our national leaders to this commitment, and we have chosen to be here this week in collaboration with Citizen Go and the Holy See to demonstrate resolve and bring the entire international community to the recognition of this genocide and the commitment of action toward the protection and preservation of Christians and Christianity in the Middle East. Consensus emerging among experts is that a safe haven or protected zone should be recognized for Christians, Yazidis, and other victims of genocide against crimes against humanity in the region of the northeastern Nineveh Plain. This is the most effective and sustainable long-term solution toward restoring these communities to justice and resettling these communities in their ancestral homelands, where they lived together in pluralism and peace until ISIS's genocide drove them out in 2014. A safe haven or protected zone would be established in cooperation with and coordination with regional and national governments, the community of civilized nations, the international community, all of which should contribute observers and facilitators to oversee the security, resettlement, and economic revitalization of these communities. We also hope for peace in Syria, but the absence of fair representation of Syria's 2 million Christians at the current Geneva negotiations is cause for deep concern for us. Much hangs in the balance for religious minorities as the future of Syrian society and a new constitution are contemplated, including the 2,000-year-old Christian community, which has given so much heritage to the culturally rich nation. Christianity has been a positive agent of moderation, tolerance, respect for human rights throughout Syrian history. It is vital that peace in Syria be one in which the survival and full participation of Christians in the public life of the nation is guaranteed. Therefore, IDC implores the United States and the United Nations to ensure the full contribution, participation, and consideration of the Syrian Christians in its hopes for a negotiated peace. IDC looks forward to working increasingly with international partners toward the goals of relieving the immediate suffering of these communities while crafting long-term solutions so that Christians can once again live in peace, prosperity, harmony, and integration in their native homelands. Thank you again for your attendance at this event. Thank you again for your concern, your passion, and your commitment to this issue. May God bless the work that you are doing for the protection and preservation of Christians and Christianity in the Middle East. Thank you very much.